The Toronto Raptors, invented in 1998 by Glenn Grunwald. If you're 16 years old, you likely heard what I just said and thought, yeah, okay, that sounds right to me. But anyone who's been on this planet long enough to understand what true suffering is thinking, hold on a second, the Raptors were founded in 1995 by John Bidoff. How dare you lie to me, Misinformed? I can't believe you would betray my trust like this. Well, on a second, you lack of name comprehension having piece of garbage. Shockingly, I'm actually not lying to you at all. Yes, technically the Toronto Raptors franchise was started in 1995, but they also technically played their home games in the Sky Dome, which... I mean, look at this. What is this? You expect me to believe a real basketball team plays here? Come on now. It'd be less jarring to see a soccer game in a baseball stadium. Okay, I take it back. This is for idiots. It's way worse. Nevertheless, a sports team without at least a good roster or a not big dumb home arena is no sports team at all, which is why it wasn't until the 1998 draft that the Toronto Raptors franchise really got its start, where they managed to snag a player who would go on to be recognized as one of the best rookies in his year, and in the future would be selected for multiple All-Star teams, Anton Jameson, who they immediately traded for Vince Carter. Also known as the best dunker in the history of basketball and the cause of a Canada-wide outbreak of Vinsanity, characterized by a sudden interest in basketball, daily attempts at improving your box jump, and posterizing anyone unlucky enough to be in your path. Before the arrival of Vince Carter, Toronto was a less than mediocre team. The one bright spot was getting Tracy McGrady in the previous year's draft. A good player, but one good player does not make a team. It's a law of basketball, you see it everywhere. Just look at the current LA Lakers. If you have one really good player, it really won't make much of a difference. But if you have two really good players, now you got a championship caliber team. And McGrady and Carter were both really fucking good. You can tell because they both had nicknames, the hallmark of a good player in any sport. Vince Carter was referred to as Air Canada due to his 50-inch vertical and ability to dunk literally over top of people a foot taller than him, and Tracy McGrady was referred to as the Big Sleep, due to his ability to sleep for 20 hours a day, wake up just in time for the start of the game, and then put up 40 points. The duo of McGrady and Carter led the Toronto Raptors from irrelevant expansion team to playoff contenders, backed by a supporting cast consisting of Muggsy Bogues, the shortest ever NBA player, standing at 5'3". His small stature meant that it was difficult for taller players to see him. He eluded his defenders' field of view with ease, allowing him to create enough separation to get open shots consistently. Del Curry, a three-point specialist who during his time with Toronto taught his sons Seth and Steph the ancient art of throwing a ball into a 10-foot tall hoop from 24 feet away. I think Hakeem Olajuwon was there too. Maybe, I'm working purely off memory here. I was barely a V2 proto-human when this shit was going down. I just recently fully awakened. I wasn't yet 100% perceptive. In their first ever season with a positive win-loss record, the Toronto Raptors were swept in the first round of the playoffs. But hey, baby steps. As thanks for their contribution to Canada's only basketball team, a mattress store known as Big Sleep Country was founded in reference to Tracy McGrady. An airline known as Air Canada was founded in reference to Vince Carter, and a real basketball arena was finally built for them, known as the Air Canada Centre, again, in reference to Vince Carter. Feeling disenfranchised since the name of the new arena was solely a reference to Carter and wasn't named the Big Air Sleep Canada Centre as he had suggested, Tracy McGrady elected to part ways with the Raptors. Now down to just one really good player, Toronto managed to defy the odds and not only make the playoffs, but actually won their first round series. It's a good thing everyone enjoyed it so much, because it would be the last playoff series they would win for quite a while. After a few seasons of mediocrity, new head staff whose general philosophy could be summarized as winning is overrated, and Carter being benched every fourth quarter as Sam Mitchell emphasized not winning, Air Canada had enough and flew south of the border to join the New York Nets. With Vince Carter gone, it was time for a new star to rise up and take his place as centerpiece of the team. And so began the Bosh Era, which was... And so began the Demar Derozan Era. With the right team built around them and a new GM, DeRozan and his best friend Kyle Lowry led Toronto to back-to-back-to-back division championships, back-to-back first-round playoff losses, and back-to-back-to-back playoffs where they were eliminated single-handedly by LeBron James. This was an interesting time for the Toronto Raptors. This was arguably the best team they've put on the floor in their franchise history, but every time they ran into LeBron James, it just fell apart. And look, I get it. I don't know if you guys know this, but LeBron James, pretty fucking good at basketball. But this was something else. You could put the full Toronto Raptors against LeBron James and 4 balloon animals to help him on defense, and the final score would probably be like 124-110. Big W for LeBron. Case in point, the 2017-2018 season. The Raptors set a team record for most wins in a single regular season, and their coach, Dwayne Casey, won Coach of the Year. But they capped off the season by losing 4 straight games to LeBron in the playoffs. Again. All in all, though, a pretty good season, right? Another step towards a championship. If you keep this team together, maybe fill in some gaps, alter your strategy a bit, you can get past LeBron and make it to the Nah, fuck that! Coach of the year? More like coach of the fuck out of here. Face of the franchise? More like gone by sunrise. Kyle Lowry? Alright, you can stay, but you're on thin fucking ice. Masai Ujiri knew something drastic had to be done if he was going to deliver a championship to Toronto, something the city hadn't experienced since 1993.
The Argos won the Grey Cup in 2017, man.
Shut the fuck up. While an era was coming to an end just north of the Canadian border, just north of the Mexican border, coincidentally, Kawhi Leonard was preparing to add the head of a second great franchise to his mantle. This was the first of 6 stars to align for the Raptors championship season. After playing approximately 2.7 games in the 2017-2018 season for San Antonio, Kawhi was more than ready to move on and made it known he wanted to return to his home state of California. So the Spurs obliged him and sent him on his way to Toronto. Not quite the sun-drenched, star-studded earthquake potential environment he was expecting. So in this transaction, Toronto gave up their fan-favorite star player for a LeBron kryptonite superstar, who by all accounts didn't really want to be there. And can you really blame him? He's lived in California and Texas his whole life. Canada is a frozen hell in comparison. You have to learn the metric system. You have to convert your paychecks into Canadian dollars. You gotta get touched up by TSA agents every time you travel for an away game. And when you're at home, Oshawa is right there. Ugh. So fans were understandably apprehensive, but once we heard that $1 million laugh, we knew everything was going to be okay. During that same offseason, LeBron decided to make the trip to Kawhi's home state in his place. Star number 2 had lined up. With LeBron out of the Eastern Conference, Toronto only had to see him twice during the regular season, and can only see him in the playoffs at the very end. That is, if he makes it there. As stated before, it takes more than one good player to make a basketball team. So Toronto surrounded Kawhi with a supporting cast of good players that could hold their own, even without him. With this in mind, the Toronto Raptors allowed Kawhi Leonard to sit out a quarter of the regular season in order to ensure that he could nurse his quad or knee or whatever lower body injury he had. And in order to still win games with their best player on a load management schedule, the script here just says ejaculation joke in parentheses. I think I forgot to actually write something. Fuck it, we'll just move on. They needed star number 3 to line up the rest of the team. Starting with Kyle Lowry, an all-star point guard who excels at playmaking, getting people to run into him, and missing pull-up threes. Danny Green, who was also part of the deal that sent Kawhi to Toronto. I think I forgot to mention that. Whatever. Pascal Siakam, a guy who picked up a basketball for the first time at the age of 17 and now 8 years later is an award-winning NBA player. That's fucked. Serge Ibaka, working double duty as the team's designated rim protector and team chef.
I cooked testicle Philly cheesesteak. Bruh.
Jonas Valanciunas, a tall white guy with knowledge in the dark arts, allowing him to craft tiny replica people to do his bidding. He was traded mid-season for Marc Gasol, a taller, whiter guy. No dark arts though, unfortunately. And Drake, who is over there losing his mind on the sidelines and giving dramatic post-game interviews in order to lessen the media pressure on the team itself. After overachieving in the regular season, finishing with a win-loss well above 50%, it was time to make a deep playoff run, and with no LeBron in sight to ruin it, they were poised to actually accomplish something. They got through round 1 against Orlando pretty easily, but in round 2 they needed to go all the way to game 7, and for star number 4 to take its place in line. I don't really have anything to say for this, just watch the final play of game 7. Try and tell me the universe itself wasn't pulling for Toronto to win.
It's off to Leonard, defended by Simmons. Is this the dagger? Game! Series! Toronto has won!
With Toronto taking the W over Philly, they face off against Milwaukee in the Eastern Conference Finals. Things started off not great for Toronto, finding themselves quickly down 0-2 in the series. But then, on May 20th, something changed, or more accurately, something arrived. Star number 5 in the lineup, Fred VanVleet Jr. Fred VanVleet Sr. is a point guard for Toronto, backing up Kyle Lowry, a consistent but generally not a dramatically game-changing player, or at least he was that. Here are VanVleet Sr.'s average stats in the playoffs before the birth of his son. Rather low point totals, less than average shooting percentage, not very eventful. Here are VanVleet Sr.'s average stats after the birth of his son. I don't know what Fred VanVleet Jr. told his dad after he hopped out of that womb, but whatever it was, it worked, and VanVleet Sr. became central to Toronto's championship run, and now leads the league in change in average points per game per sons born. Riding off the back of Fred VanVleet's improved production, the Toronto Raptors needed just the 6th and final star to line up to cap off this playoff run, and that was the Golden State Warriors medical staff. The Warriors are/were the best team in the league. You know that whole one good player is nothing, two good players are everything rule? The Golden State Warriors took that idea and ran it to its logical conclusion, fielding a starting five of only all-stars, but they were going through some debilitating injury trouble. Kevin Durant had a calf strain and as big quotation marks as I can find, and Klay Thompson had a tweaked knee that looked a little unstable. Despite this, the medical staff said fuck it and decided to use the NBA Finals as the site for their field research into how far you can push the human body. Kevin Durant's calf strain proved to be a little more severe than first expected, and with the exertion of a basketball game, boom, that's a torn Achilles tendon, out for next season. Klay Thompson landed awkwardly after an attempted dunk, that's a torn ACL, out for next season. If I'm the NBA, I'm pissed. This is a star-driven league, and you're gonna let two of the game's brightest stars go down with season-long injuries all because you put winning a 4th championship in 5 years above the health and well-being of your athletes, you short-sighted, selfish, dangerously incompetent motherfucker! But it is what it is. It's unfortunate it had to be this way. Steph Curry simply couldn't hold it down alone in the arena where he learned how to shoot, but that's just how the stars align. Oh, speaking of which, I forgot the biggest, brightest, most important star. Patrick McCaw. At only 23 years old, with only 3 seasons in the NBA, Patrick McCaw already has 3 championship wins. This man has a 100% championship win rate in the NBA. He's never not won a championship in a season he has played. He played in less than half of Toronto's playoff games, and only scored 5 points during that time, but it doesn't matter. Just having him on your team means you win. And hey, Toronto's already got a qualifying offer for him, so I look forward to next year's parade. Hopefully it'll be less of a shit show than this year's. And now a word from some of my patrons. Friendly reminder that the global scientific consensus tells us that we are on a collision course for extinction if CO2 emissions continue at the current rate. Oh, also go Raptors. Could the Raptors get Kawhi Leonard to stay by offering him a Drake body pillow? Bruh.